the day I woke up in a billionaire's body. I'm standing on the penthouse balcony, 32nd floor, looking down at the city below. My hands, no, his hands, are trembling as they hold a glass of $15,000 a bottle whiskey. In exactly 45 minutes, the board meeting starts. They're going to ask me about the $2.3 billion acquisition, about the 4,700 jobs that depend on my signature, about market strategies I don't understand, and I'm a delivery driver who makes $850 a month. Let me go back to the beginning, to the day my life became an impossible nightmare of luxury. 3 weeks ago, I was Daniel Carter, 28 years old, drowning in $47,000 of student loan debt that never gave me a career, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn where the bathroom leaked and the neighbors fought every night. My routine was waking up at 6 a.m., grabbing my bike, spending 12 hours delivering food to people who barely looked me in the eyes. I had a girlfriend, Sophie. 3 years together. She worked as a receptionist at a veterinary clinic, made less than me. We dreamed of saving money for a simple wedding, maybe a honeymoon in the Catskills if we could save for 2 years. Her mother hated it, hated me. Mrs. Linda was obsessed with status. She constantly compared Sophie to her cousins who had married well, a lawyer, a doctor, a bank manager. I was the failure boyfriend who rode a bike and smelled like grease at the end of the day. "You're going to waste your youth on this delivery boy?" I heard her say once, thinking I wasn't listening. Julia married a plastic surgeon, has a penthouse in Manhattan, travels to Paris, and you? Eating ramen every day with a man who doesn't even have life insurance. Sophie always defended me, but I saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the doubt. That Friday morning, November 23rd, started normal. I picked up my first order at 7:15 a.m., a $38 acai bowl for a luxury building on the Upper East Side. The doorman made me wait 15 minutes in the lobby because the resident is still sleeping and doesn't like to be woken up. When I finally went up, it was a triplex apartment, original artwork on the walls, a view that covered all of Central Park. The guy who answered was my age, wearing gym clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Leave it in the kitchen," he said, without looking at me, eyes on his phone. No tip. I went down chewing on anger. Anger at him, anger at myself, anger at life. The second delivery was in the same neighborhood, a mansion behind 10-foot walls. The intercom had facial recognition cameras. When they finally let me in, there were 4 security guards in the garden. "Delivery for Mr. Augustus Rothwell," I told the guard at the door. He frowned. "Mr. Rothwell doesn't order from apps." "It's right here." I showed him my phone. "Artisan Burger, 127, address confirms." He spoke into his radio, waited, looked at me with suspicion. "Someone must have pranked him," he finally said. "Mr. Rothwell has a personal chef. He doesn't eat app burgers." My day was ruined before 8 a.m. But then an elderly man appeared at the door. Perfectly groomed gray hair, a suit I recognized from a Forbes article I once read. Hermenegildo Zegna, $8,000 minimum. Tired but intelligent eyes. "I placed the order," he said. Hoarse voice, weak. "Let the young man in." The guards looked shocked but obeyed. I entered the mansion. Italian marble floors, a crystal chandelier that looked like it was worth a couple $1,000,000. Paintings I was certain were originals. A Rothko on the wall, maybe. Augustus Rothwell led me to a living room that was bigger than my entire apartment. "Sit," he said, pointing to a leather sofa that probably cost more than my car. I was confused. "Sir, I just came to deliver." "Your name is Daniel?" He interrupted me. My blood ran cold. "How do you know my name?" He smiled, a sad smile. "Because I had you called here. The order was an excuse." "I don't understand." "You're Rebecca Carter's son." The world stopped. My mother had died when I was 5 years old. I barely had memories of her. My father never talked about it. Raised me alone, working 3 jobs, until he died of a heart attack when I was 20. "How did you know my mother?" I whispered. Augustus closed his eyes. "I loved Rebecca 30 years ago, when I was still nobody, just an entrepreneur starting out, before the fortune, before Rothwell Holdings was worth $4.7 billion. He opened his eyes, staring at me. I wanted to marry her, but my family wouldn't allow it. She was poor, daughter of a janitor. My father gave me an ultimatum. Either I broke up with Rebecca, or he would cut me off from the inheritance and the business. I couldn't breathe. I was a coward, he continued. I chose the money. I broke up with your mother over the phone. She was 2 weeks pregnant. She didn't tell me. Or maybe she did and I didn't want to hear it. I don't remember anymore. I only know that she disappeared, married another man. And I built an empire on top of guilt. You're saying that you're my son, Daniel. The burger fell from my hand. The next 2 hours were a blur. Augustus showed me old photos. My mother young, laughing, beautiful. Him beside her, young too, with eyes full of dreams. Letters she had written. A DNA test he had secretly done. He had obtained my DNA through a cup I used at a restaurant weeks ago. Apparently he had been following me for months. Why now? I asked, still in shock. Why after 28 years? Because I'm dying, he said simply. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, 6 months maximum, the doctors said. 3 months ago. My world collapsed again. I have a legitimate family, Augustus continued. My wife Beatrice, 2 children, Richard 32 and Miranda 30. They don't know about you. Nobody knows. He paused. But I can't die without making this right, without giving you what's yours. I don't want money from... It's not about what you want. It's about what's fair, about the debt I owe your mother, you. He stood up, trembling, sick, fragile in a way no money could cure. I have a proposal. And then came the madness. The proposal was insane. Augustus wanted me to pretend to be him for a month. I'm too weak to continue running the company, but if I step away now, my children will immediately fight over succession. They'll destroy everything I built in legal battles. I need time to restructure the will, ensure the company continues functioning, and include you without causing a scandal that destroys the stock. He handed me a 40-page document. Minimal plastic surgery, some procedures. We're similar enough. Same height, same bone structure. Nobody sees my face up close anymore anyway, except my closest security guards, who will know about the plan. This is crazy. It's $500,000 in your account today, plus $2 million when it's over. And 5% of Rothwell Holdings shares when I die, about $235 million at current value. I couldn't think. It was too much money, too much power, too much lying. Why me? Why not just include me in the will? Because I need you to understand this world before you inherit part of it. I need to know if you have the strength to survive among sharks. And he hesitated. I need to redeem myself. I need you to see who I was, what I built, and decide if there's anything here worth saving. I thought of Sophie, the debt, the years delivering food, the possibility of a different life. What if I say no? Then I transfer an anonymous amount to you and we never see each other again. You go back to your bike and I die without fixing my biggest mistake. He stared at me. But I saw your mother in you today. The same strength, the same dignity. And I need to know if you have the courage for more. I said yes. I said yes for reasons that still shame me. For the money, for the curiosity, for the anger of years being invisible. And I entered hell. The first procedures were terrifying. Not complete plastic surgery as I imagined, but advanced treatments, strategic facial fillers to exactly match our structure, special contact lenses to change my eye color, skin treatments. A dentist redid 3 teeth to match his smile. I learned to imitate his posture, his way of speaking, his gestures. There was a coach, Gerald, American, $50,000 a week. He taught me in 4 intensive days how Augustus Rothwell thought, reacted, decided. He never says sorry, Gerald instructed. Only that was inconvenient. He never smiles showing teeth, always maintains a distance of 4 feet from people, never touches anyone except in handshakes, drinks Highland Park, 25-year scotch, only 2 fingers, no ice, eats little and slowly. Signs documents without reading everything, trusts the lawyers, but always asks an unexpected question that shows he understands more than he appears to. I had 3 days of accelerated corporate finance immersion, terminologies, names of key executives, history of the group's companies. The numbers made me dizzy. Rothwell Holdings controlled 23 companies, from mining to technology, with annual revenue of $8.3 billion. And then came the moment. the day I became Augustus Rothwell. The first meeting was a family dinner. His wife Beatrice, a 55-year-old woman who had been a model in the 90s, wore a $340,000 Cartier necklace like someone wearing costume jewelry. Her eyes were cold as ice. The children, Richard, a man in Italian suits and a $280,000 Patek Philippe watch, worked as VP of operations, arrogant, impatient. Miranda, wearing Chanel from head to toe, worked in the company's public relations sector, but everyone knew she was only there through nepotism. "You look different," said Beatrice, studying me. My heart raced. 3 days of preparation, and she knew. "The new medications," I responded with the hoarse voice I learned to imitate. "The doctor changed the cocktail." She nodded without much emotion. I realized something. She wasn't really worried about him. It was a performance. Everyone at that table was performing. "We need to discuss succession," said Richard, not even waiting for dinner to start. "If you're sick, Father, we need clarity. The company can't drift." "Always so eager to bury me, Richard," I responded, using the dry tone Gerald taught me. "It's not that. It's strategy. The market is speculating. Our stock fell 3% this week because of rumors about your health." Miranda rolled her eyes. "You just want to be CEO before I have a chance to prove I can lead better than you." "You?" Richard laughed. "You can't even read a financial statement." The argument escalated. Shouting. Accusations. Beatrice drank wine without intervening. I sat there watching my siblings fight over an empire they didn't even know would have a new heir. Part of me felt power. Another part felt disgust. Was this the world I had envied? These people who had everything but seemed so empty? The first week was survival, meeting after meeting. I had a personal assistant, Marcus, who knew every detail of Augustus's schedule. He practically guided me through each encounter, whispering crucial information. "The man in the blue tie is the CFO of Tech Brazil. You're negotiating their acquisition for $450 million. He's being difficult about valuation. You need to be firm." I entered, sat at the head of the mahogany table worth more than a house, and tried to appear confident while people discussed millions like I discussed tips. "The offer is fair," I said, using the language I had memorized. "You know it's fair. If we don't close by Friday, look for other buyers, but you won't find anyone willing to pay 12x EBITDA in the current market." It worked. They accepted. I had closed a deal worth almost $500 million, and all I felt was emptiness. At night, I returned to the penthouse, an 8,000-square-foot penthouse with an indoor pool, private movie theater, climate-controlled wine cellar with wines totaling $2.7 million. All this for one person who could barely sleep because he was terrified of being discovered. I called Sophie from a secret cell phone. "How's work?" she would ask, not knowing I was no longer delivering food. "Busy," I lied, "but I'm saving up some money. Soon we'll get that wedding you want." "Daniel," she sighed, "I don't care about an expensive wedding. I just want you." My heart broke because I was lying to the only person who truly loved me. On the 10th day, I met the real Augustus. He was in a hidden house in the Hamptons, frail, yellowed, dying slowly. "How's it going?" he asked. "It's a nightmare. They fight over money like hyenas. Your wife is cheating on you with the VP of marketing. They're not even discreet. Your son Richard is diverting funds to offshore accounts. Your daughter is high in half the morning meetings." Augustus laughed, a sad, bitter laugh. "And yet, this is worth $4.7 billion. How do you stand it? You get used to the loneliness, to being hated and loved only for your money, to having power but no real connection." He stared at me. "That's why I chose you. Because you still feel, still care. I need you to decide what to do with all this when I'm gone. You're really going to give me part of the company. I'm going to give you controlling interest, 51%. I almost fainted, but only if you pass the final test. The test came in the second week. There was a crucial deal. Rothwell Holdings was about to acquire a technology company called Neurosoft for $2.3 billion. It was the biggest acquisition in the holdings' history. Everything depended on a presentation to a board of investors at Citibank. Marcus prepared me. "You need to sell the vision. Show that Neurosoft will triple in value over the next 5 years. Investors are nervous because it's a lot of money." I entered the conference room. 20 executives, billionaires, people who controlled funds worth trillions of dollars. I started the presentation. The slides gleamed on the screen, numbers, projections, graphs. Then a man raised his hand. James Chen, manager of a Hong Kong fund. $2.3 billion is too risky, especially with the rumors about your health, Mr. Rothwell. If you die, who guarantees continuity? The room fell silent. This was the moment, the test. I could lie. I could sell the acquisition, protect Augustus's interests, and earn my millions. Or I could tell the truth. I looked at those people, at the power they represented, and I thought of my mother, of my father working himself to death, of Sophie, of all the times I was invisible. You're right, I said. It's too risky. Marcus nearly had a heart attack beside me. Neurosoft is overvalued by 40%. The numbers you're seeing are inflated. And I'm not going to ask you to invest billions in a bad deal just because I want to inflate my legacy before I die. The shock in the room was palpable. So what do you propose? James Chen asked, leaning forward. $1.4 billion, fair value, and a complete restructuring of Neurosoft's management before incorporating it into the group. No rush, no ego, just solid business. Silence. Then James Chen started clapping. Slowly, and others followed. Finally, he said, a CEO who prefers truth to theater. The deal was approved, on my terms, and I saved Rothwell Holdings from a disastrous acquisition that could have destroyed everything. When I returned to the Hamptons, Augustus was smiling. You passed, he said. You chose integrity over appearances, exactly what I needed to see. But hell was just beginning. Richard became suspicious, started investigating, hired a private detective. In the third week, he confronted me. You're not my father. We were alone in the penthouse office. He had a folder of documents, photos, analyses. You walk differently, think differently, decide differently. He threw the photos on the table, and I discovered my father is in the Hamptons, sick, hidden. My blood ran cold. Who are you? Richard hissed. I could have kept lying, but I was tired. I'm your brother, I said, and I told him everything. His reaction was unexpected. He sat down, processed, and then laughed. A laugh without joy. Of course he has a bastard son. Of course he chose you instead of me. Richard stared at me with pure hatred. Do you know what it's like growing up as his son? Never being good enough, never receiving approval. I did everything right. Harvard, MBA, 15 years working at this company, and he gives you control? I didn't ask for this, but you accepted. He stood up. You think you can just show up, play CEO for a month and take an empire? I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to expose this farce. I'm going to… Or, I interrupted, you can help me fix this company. He stopped. I saw the fund diversions, I continued. The offshore accounts, the $47 million you stole over the last 3 years. His face went pale. We can destroy each other, I said calmly, or we can do things differently. I'm going to offer you something your father never offered. Real partnership. Not as a subordinate, as an equal. 25% of the shares for you. Vice CEO with real decision-making power. And forgiveness for the diversions if you return the money and start clean. Richard studied me for long minutes. Why would you do this? Because I don't want this empire. But I don't want to see 4,700 employees lose their jobs because a family fought over greed. You know this business better than me. I have integrity you can learn. Together, maybe we can fix what he broke. It was the hardest negotiation of my life. But it worked. The fourth week was when everything exploded. Beatrice found out, Miranda found out, and they decided to sue me for fraud. The lawyers gathered. It was war. You impersonated my husband, Beatrice screamed. Signed documents, made deals. That's a crime. Your husband asked me to, I replied calmly, and I have everything documented, every order from him, every instruction, recorded, signed by lawyers, witnessed. You're a con artist. I'm his son, just like Richard and Miranda. The difference is he tested me before giving me power. Miranda exploded. Son, you're a bastard from a… Careful. Richard interrupted coldly. Talk about his mother like that again, and I personally guarantee you won't see a penny of the inheritance. Everyone was shocked. Richard, defending me? He saved this company from a disastrous acquisition, Richard continued. In 3 weeks, he did what our father didn't do in years, made decisions based on data, not ego. You can hate him, but he proved he deserves to be here. Beatrice looked between us, realizing she had lost. This isn't over, she threatened. I'll fight until... You'll accept the divorce Dad is offering, Richard said. $380 million, more than you deserve considering your affairs over the last 10 years that I documented. She went pale. The war ended, but it left scars. On the 28th day, Augustus died. I was there, holding his hand. The hand of the man who abandoned my mother but gave me a choice. You're better than me, he whispered. Rebecca would be proud. And he was gone. The funeral was a circus. Politicians, CEOs, celebrities, all pretending grief for a man they only cared about when alive. But I cried for real, not for the billionaire, for the father I never had, for the lost possibility. The will was read. 51% of shares to me, 25% to Richard, 15% to Miranda, 9% to charitable foundations. Nothing to Beatrice except the divorce. Miranda looked at me with pure hatred. You stole my inheritance. No, I replied. Your father gave me a responsibility, and I'm going to honor it by doing things differently. Today, 6 months later, Rothwell Holdings has changed. We increased wages at the base. We implemented a program where employees' children receive full scholarships. We created a $100 million fund for social projects in underserved communities. Richard and I lead together. He teaches me business. I teach him empathy. Miranda still hates me, but she's in therapy and started actually working. And Sophie? I told her everything, every lie, every truth. She slapped me, cried, screamed, then laughed. You're an idiot. You could have told me. I was afraid of losing you. Losing me? She shook her head. Daniel, I loved you when you delivered burgers. You think money changes that? We got married 2 weeks later. Simple ceremony, 20 people, in a garden in the Hamptons, near where Augustus died. Her mother came. Mrs. Linda, who despised me so much, now tried to be nice. Disgusting. You don't need to pretend, I told her directly. I know who you are, and I know you're only here because now I have money. Sophie forgave you, but I don't forget. She turned red with shame. There are nights I still wake up in panic, thinking I'll be discovered, that someone will expose the farce. But then I remember it wasn't a farce. It was a test, and I passed by choosing to be human first, billionaire second. There's $2.1 billion in my account, power that frightens, responsibility that weighs heavy. But there are also 4,700 families that depend on my decisions, communities that our programs are changing. And a chance to prove that wealth doesn't need to be built on top of loneliness and abandonment. My mother, Rebecca, never had money, but she had dignity, and she raised me with love before she left. Augustus had billions, but he died alone, trying to buy redemption. I choose to be both, her integrity, his opportunities. And every day before each meeting, I look at a small photo I keep in my wallet. Rebecca, at 20 years old, smiling, pregnant with me, not knowing that the father of her child would abandon her, but that the son would grow up to honor her. This is for you, Mom, I whisper. Everything is for you. And then I enter the boardroom, not as a delivery driver pretending to be a billionaire, but as Daniel Carter Rothwell, son of Rebecca, son of Augustus, heir to 2 worlds. And finally, after 28 years of being invisible, owner of my own destiny. If there's a lesson in all this, it's this. Money doesn't define human worth. Neither does the lack of it. What defines it is what you choose to do when you have power, whether you oppress or elevate, whether you forget where you came from or honor the path. I was born poor, lived poor, and suddenly became one of the richest men in America. But the wealth that matters most? It's Sophie sleeping beside me, trusting me despite everything. It's Richard, my brother, calling me to discuss not just business but life. It's knowing that someone in some community will have education because of the programs we created. Augustus gave me billions, but my mother, Rebecca, who died poor and abandoned, gave me something no money can buy. The certainty that being human is worth more than any number in a bank account. And that's the inheritance I'll protect until my last day.